Hey listeners, Tina here. I've got very exciting news to report. C-Suite Social Media, my marketing agency of 5.5 years and sponsor of In the Suite podcast, was acquired by Intentionally, the growth engine design consultancy firm founded by Kelly Waldrick and Megan Richter. I couldn't be more excited and grateful to Intentionally. Like you, I've learned so much here in the Suite from our amazing guests that I've applied to my own life. Yes, I have. And it means so much to me that you're here. Thank you again for listening. Please contact me on LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch. And I'm wishing you and your family a healthy and a happy holiday season and new year.
On this week's episode of In the Suite with Tina Powell.
Even though we don't always want to be creative, the people who are most successful in their creative pursuits are the ones who can motivate themselves to do something creative when they don't feel like it. So, not always comfortable, but I think really important. In my mind, there's so much great work, personal work, professional work people can do, given the right opportunity to introspect. And I guess my hope is really just that get on stage can leave folks with an opportunity to revisit an experience they've had or visit an experience that they have not in a new light and see where that leads them.
Hi, this is Tina Powell, host of In the Suite, where I sit down with top women leaders and some of the biggest names in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Together, we'll discover some of their best secrets and top strategies to grow a great business, build a strong brand, and lead teams in the 21st century. I hope you'll enjoy hearing their amazing personal stories of triumph, trepidation, and transformation in hopes of becoming better leaders ourselves. The time for you to lead is now, and you're in the suite. Today's episode of In the Suite is the first of its kind. I've invited my first guest host and shero, Stephanie Foster, in the suite to interview the multi-talented Tucker Bryant at this year's Carson Next Sell conference in Las Vegas. Stephanie Foster is a startup executive and a startup advisor, an ETA 40 under 40 honoree, that's Electronic Transactions Association, and a previous guest of In the Suite. Tucker is an award-winning poet and storyteller who left his full-time job as a product marketing manager at Google to help large corporations explore the connection between poetic thinking and creative leadership to live a healthier and more fulfilled life. Tucker's passion for language, writing, and performance began during his schooling days in England. However, when he started his career in Silicon Valley, he discovered how many people in the corporate world are uncomfortable with assessing the creative part of the thought process to bring about innovation. And because poetry allows you to be vulnerable, take risks, and explore new things, Tucker believes that everyone can benefit from exploring this art form. As a result, in his hybrid presentations and performances, Tucker Bryant uses poetry as a springboard to inspire people to develop new perspectives and tear down comfort zones to spark long-lasting impact. In fact, one of the many gifts that you'll discover about Tucker Bryant in this episode is his approach to poetic storytelling, which is so powerful and so emotional. It's no surprise that he receives a standing ovation every single stage. Tucker's stories have been seen by millions online. He's featured at TEDx and shared stages with some of the highest level speakers. He's spoken on stage with Mark Cuban, FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, NASA Director Michelle Thaler, and founders and executives from Fortune 500 companies like Twitter, Amazon, McDonald's, and Walgreens. Today's episode with Tucker is a masterclass in itself that'll put a spring in your step. Not only does he share with us personal details on how poetry helped him overcome depression, but he also gives us golden tips on how to become better storytellers. He also reveals his childhood dream, his love for music, what he did to get out of this comfort zone, and the positive impact women have had in his successful life. If you're ready to hear and make a positive change in your life, Tucker Bryant is the speaker you need to hear. He's dynamic and engaging. He gets people fired up, motivated, and inspired in the suite.
Creativity is the most critical skill for leaders to leverage to succeed in an era of permanent uncertainty. This is a quote from our esteemed guest today, Tucker Bryant. Recording live from Carson's Excel, Las Vegas, from the Podcast Lounge, this is Stephanie Foster and for Tina Powell. I would like to thank the folks at Excel for setting up this beautiful podcast lounge and hosting us this evening. I am here with Tucker Bryant, poet, keynote speaker, ex-Googler. Tucker delivered an outstanding keynote this morning here at Excel, which we're all still talking about. I'm truly honored to be speaking with him right now. Wow.
I appreciate you. I'm
Tucker
excited to be
Bryant,
here with you.
take a seat in the suite.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, so we're just going to dive right in to kick off our conversation. So I want to ask, aside from your keynote this morning, which I'm sure you enjoyed, what are you enjoying the most here at Excel in this financial services conference? Is there anything that surprised you about financial services as you were preparing for this and meeting folks this week?
Yeah, I know that we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but honestly, the thing that surprised me most was just, again, this is no knock against any industry or any whatever, but just how cool and great people are. You come to conferences and a lot of the time people are kind of on their own wavelength, which is totally understandable. But it's really kind of warming to come somewhere like this where everyone is really down to earth, really smart and driven and compassionate all at once. And so getting to have conversations with you, with Broderick, with Ron and Jamie and all these other folks, it's just been really nice to be in a spot where it feels like, wow, people are not only crushing it at what they're doing, but they're also like really lovely people to have conversations with. So that's been something to check my own prejudices on in a way that's been really positive.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. I talking to somebody today at one of the breakout sessions as well. I met 4 folks on the lunch line earlier, and the 4 of us ended up sitting together at lunch, and we just had the most authentic conversation around like our childhood, how we were raised, and how that shaped us into the professionals that we are. And I don't think I've ever been to a professional conference where I got to have a deep conversation at the lunch table. So
I love to hear that, especially because, it sounds like Ron is really trying to inspire that within the crowd. It's something that I like having the ability to dig into with folks as well. And so, me knowing very little about money or anything other than words, hear about FinServe, my expectation is folks who are really one-track minded on driving forward their OKRs, their goals, etc. And it's clear that y'all are doing that, but to be in an environment where it's so clear that people are also super down to dig in as you just described, it's like it's a really special atmosphere, genuinely.
Yeah, it is. So thank you to the Carson team and great job.
True. Shout out.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and just set the stage for our listeners here. You have a fascinating story from being raised in England to coming into the U.S., becoming a graduate from Stanford University, to co-founder of a company, to being project manager and marketer and product manager over at Google. And now you transition over to full-time poet and like full-time motivational speaker who's receiving standing ovations on every stage. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Like where did you grow up? What was that like as a kid? What were your hopes and dreams?
Yeah, so my parents moved us out from a little town south of Boston called Sharon, Mass. When I was about 4 years old. We moved to England, and I was out there southwest London and around Greater London for the entirety of those 15 years, give or take. And honestly, as a kid, I was I was kind of the person that I just described expecting to meet when I came to this conference. I was super one-track minded on getting grades and resume builders and checking all these boxes that I thought would make me competitive in these ways that I thought would be important for the long-term scope of my life. And I'm sure that we'll get into this a little bit more, but I think upon leaving that environment, I started to realize that the world and my world could and should be a little bigger than that, and sort of flip things on their head. But I feel grateful to be able to have had a childhood where I grew up with supportive family and had the things I needed to succeed, and was able to be in my bubble with as much comfort as I had.
Yeah. So you have mentioned publicly that you've suffered from depression and that you have leveraged poetry as a way to pull yourself kind of like out of the darkness, out of the negative thoughts. But what I'm really interested in understanding is, when did you discover that you could share this gift with the rest of us, right? And many of us here at Excel this week got to witness that firsthand, and we were truly motivated and inspired by your words. You do have a very unique ability to communicate and inspire and motivate with your words. So kind of walk us through, like, when did that happen?
Thank you for saying that. I guess the kind of blow by blow is that when I left my hometown in England, flew to California for college, I had this moment on the plane, which I think you might have heard about, where I kind of realized that all those things I've been stuffing into those person achievement boxes to try to make myself into whoever I wanted to be back then, just realized that they weren't the important things to be focusing on, or the only things to be focusing on. And poetry kind of gave me a route to explore these questions that were uncomfortable, but that I think needed to have some sort of voice, or that had been suppressing for a while. Things related to depression, things related to substance abuse, things like this. And about a year after that, of just kind of writing poems and keeping them to myself, there was a collective at my college, the Spoken Word Collective, that was more centered around the performative element of poetry. And there was this team, they send like a team to a national slam poetry competition every year, and kind of gone back and forth for several weeks, like, should I do it? Should I not? I was super terrified to get on stage, and I think I had like registered, and in the 5 minutes before I was supposed to be on stage, I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this, and tried to pull out of the opportunity. And someone more senior poet, which is a funny term, who was at the competition as well, kind of sat me down and said, just feel the fear, do it anyway. It went pretty well, and I'm grateful to that person to this day for shaking me out of my fear and getting me to at least dip my toes in, which is, now got me submerged to my neck. So
feel the fear and do it anyway. I love that. I think so many of us, professionals, so many of us women, so many of us Black women need to hear that, right? And take it in. Feel the fear, but do it anyway.
100%.
Awesome. So, storytelling is an art. I will go ahead and admit that I am a poor storyteller. I try. I'm learning from you, Tucker, and I want to be better. Truly, not everybody can do it. It is a very unique skill set, I'll say that. But what tips can you share with us, all of our listeners here on, all of us leaders in the financial services industry? Like, what can we do to become better storytellers?
So first thing I'm going to say is I don't believe you for a second when you say that you're not a good storyteller. Just like having a couple of brief interactions with you, I won't put you on the stand, but
Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah. So I had to get that out of the way up front. But another disclaimer I'd say is that this might be an unpopular opinion, but it's one that I feel strongly about. I think that all creative pursuits, storytelling and poetry, other creative pursuits that I don't actually know much about, but believe they're in a similar category, I think they can only be learned. I don't believe that creativity is this innate thing that either we're born with or we don't, and that there might be some people who are driven towards finger painting more when they're children and thus have this compounding time element, compounding learn from folks like you, that leads them to developing and nurturing those skills over time in ways that folks without those proclivities might not. But I for any person out there who might be listening and doesn't think that they are a natural storyteller or whatever that might look like for them, I personally believe that with the time, effort, whatever else, you can be and will be. So, other disclaimer. To your actual question, there are two things that have been super helpful to me. One is from one of my mentors, a guy named Robbie Crabtree, who has a company named Performative Speaking. They're doing world-class work on training founders, executives on how to tell stories in ways that are effective and drive business for them. And he has a framework that he walks folks through when they're telling a story in any context, whether it's extemporaneous or if it's a pitch, etc. And all the tenets of that framework are super helpful, but the two that I think are quick to understand and helpful to have in your mind as you're going through your storytelling journey is that, first of all, every story should have a goal. And second of all, every story should be tied to an emotion. So there should always be an outcome we're trying to at least get our audience closer to by the end of our time on the figurative stage. And once we've established what that is, we also want to be able to call out what the emotion is that we can sort of play on to try to get folks to sign on to that goal more intimately. So if at Excel today, I came wanting to protest the exorbitant cost of flavored toothpicks or something, the goal that I might identify when writing this keynote might have been, I want folks to rally around the cause of disrupting the flavored toothpick industry. I know it's a ridiculous example, but better than me trying to sound smart.
Hey, you know what? I would totally be protesting that too.
There we go. Yeah, they are fun when you do find a good mint flavored toothpick in a Vietnamese restaurant, etc. So if my goal is to get the audience to rally around the cause of disrupting the flavored toothpick industry, I might then say, okay, I think the emotion that's going to be most effective in getting folks to drive towards that goal is frustration. So I might use those two insights as sort of strategic underpinnings when going about how I frame my story, what sort of anecdotes I tell, and how I present it. So that's the first thing from Robbie at Performative Speaking. But the second thing that I think is also helpful, which is something that I've kind of just noticed over the years of watching people tell stories and looking at the way artists do their thing, comedians, etc., is that I think it's helpful to remember that even though once you're finished telling your story, people are going to remember what you talked about, they're only actually going to remember one or two or maybe three things you said verbatim. They're going to remember, oh, that's the guy who talked about cybersecurity. But if they can walk away with 2 quotes from you, that's a win. And when starting to look at the sort of one-liners that people tend to pull out from thought leaders, comedians, poets, people in movies, etc., I started to notice that there were really 4 rhetorical tactics that were involved in maybe like 85% of them. I won't define them all to avoid wasting your time, but I'll share the tactics and people can look into them if they're interested. The 4 techniques are paradox, antithesis, diacope, and tricolon. And so for quotes that we know of, like JFK's, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, he's putting a simple idea into antithesis by juxtaposing 2 opposite ideas for contrasting effect. And because of that tactic, there's this little ear candy that we end up with that makes it easier to remember. So I would say, this is a really long answer, for this second piece, identify your 1, 2, or 3 most important insights in your story, and then think of ways that you can deliver those insights as a one-liner using one of these 4 rhetorical tactics that I just outlined, and people will more likely remember what you said and spread that impact long after you leave the stage.
I love that. As you're walking through these kind of like steps, I'm thinking of all of the keynotes that we had today on the main stage. And I'm thinking of the quotes that were tweeted online and some of the takeaways and the key kind of like nuggets that I personally remember from what I heard this morning. And it makes total sense.
They're everywhere. Once you start noticing that you have this framing, you'll see them everywhere. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is like a hack to being like memorable or catchy or whatever. So I super encourage anyone to look into those 4 tactics and use and abuse them.
Let's bottle that up and sell it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So I did do a little bit of stalking on social media to prepare for this today. And I did notice that in one of your Instagram videos at the beginning of the year, you said the following: "This is the year I am rediscovering everything or serenading that is right at my fingertips." And that totally spoke to me. It made me think of the book that Shonda Rhimes wrote about like the year of yes. And I personally, back in 2018, I went through a year of yes, where I said yes to all the things, no matter how ridiculous or fearful or expensive that they were, right? I really wanted to get out of my comfort zone. So I related to your quote.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you were, for 2022, what are 3 things that you did that got you out of your comfort zone?
It's a great question. And I appreciate it because it holds me to account for the stuff I talk about on stage. Because I do struggle a lot with getting out of my comfort zone, just as I think any other person does. So it's good to have to think, did you do it right this year? So for me, the 3 things are all related to writing. That is kind of my conduit for challenging my comfort zone. So the first one is just committing to a daily habit. You know, I try to write for, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, I try to write every day. And it's really coming from this idea that even though we don't always want to be creative, the people who are most successful in their creative pursuits are the ones who can motivate themselves to do something creative when they don't feel like it. So not always comfortable, but I think really important. The second thing is kind of like killing my darlings in the context of what I write. There are a lot of tactics or pieces of language that I'll get really attached to, which I think is a beautiful thing, but challenging myself to think of other ways to express an idea so that horizon is always broadening is something I'm trying to do. And then the last one I think would be exploring subject matter that might be a little bit unexplored and uncomfortable to explore. I'm a proponent for looking for opportunities to have conversations with folks that evaluate relationships, evaluate the state of your internal health, emotionally, etc. And while I'm not excellent at doing the conversations thing, I try to have those conversations with myself, if no one else, through my writing. So taking a look in the literary mirror in that sense is something else that's been happening a lot this year.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Appreciate you.
I'm going to use what Ron said this morning during one of his sessions. So how would you rate how well you're doing in terms of achieving these 3 things for 2022?
That's a really thoughtful question. Out of 10, I'm going to say, I think I'm doing like a 6. I think there's like a lot more I could be doing. It's definitely happening, but I know that I wouldn't have to expend a huge amount of discomfort to get to like a 7 or an 8. So thank you for giving me the barometer check, because now I have no reason to not try to do better. So thank you.
There you go. And you still have a few months to go in the year.
True.
So you have time.
I'll make up for it.
Hey, listeners, if you're looking for actionable advice and motivation to get you through your day, follow In the Suite Pod at In the Suite Pod on Instagram. This week, we feature 5 tips to get your business agile and 15 tips to help you save money this holiday season. And from all of us at In the Suite and Intentionally, we wish you and yours a happy holiday season and an amazing new year.
I remember in our kind of like previous conversations, we talked about the impact of the women in your life. And this is a podcast here in the suite. The majority of our listeners are female leaders in financial services. So I would love to hear any particular stories that you might have from a woman or several women that have impacted your life and kind of like helping you in becoming the man that you are today.
Yeah. I know I mentioned this, but there are almost too many to count, but 3 that I would love to call out. First of all is my mom. Gotta shout out mom first and foremost. She's just from day one been the number one supporter, sort of place of solace and affirmation that I'm able to come back to consistently. And I don't think that I'd have the confidence to pursue a really bizarre thing in my career if not for the sort of subconscious support and belief that I have that someone out there loves me a ton and will want me to do the things that sort of make me feel whole. So shout out to mom first and foremost. But then 2 other women I'd also love to call out are former managers that I've had over the last few years. First woman is a woman named Byra Diakieva. She is a manager from Google who I was honestly terrified of when I first met her. She was super intense, super competent, no frills, avoiding saying a profane word there. No frills or, any time wasted. And really, I just felt really motivated to impress her because of how amazing she was at what she does. But over time, I started to also see how that intensity came from a really genuine place of passion about what she does and compassion for the people that she led and wanted to see doing their best. So Byra is the second person. And then on the other side of the fence on that spectrum is another manager I had whose name is Mediha Abdullahi. And she was also extremely competent and incredible at what she does, but always had this sense of we're getting stuff done, we're getting lots of it done, and we're doing it extremely well, but we're never taking ourselves very seriously. And that was a really interesting and different philosophy from the way that Byra leads and works to be exposed to. And so even though both of these approaches are opposite sides of the same coin, I feel like it's been really impactful for me to be able to draw upon both of those sorts of energies at times when it's been relevant or when I've needed to tap into being really serious about what I'm doing and finding that passion and care for others, or recognizing that, hey, if things don't work out, so what? We're just going to do the best job that we are capable of, which is going to be great, and then move on to the next day. So shout out mom, shout out Byra, shout out Mediha.
I love that. I love what you just said about like mom being a place of consolation. Like that's how I feel about like my mother. Now I feel like I need to call mom. Shout out to mom.
Yeah, same. I'll call mom tomorrow, I promise.
So let's shift to fun topic now. Music.
Ooh, yes.
I love music. Like music is my go-to when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm exercising, when I need to get ready for a big event. Like I use techno, like David Guetta techno music.
Hey, okay, I was going to ask what kind of word?
Like get me pumped up for the
feel
next
it.
meeting. So I a little birdie mentioned that you play guitar. And my husband plays guitar, so that like totally spoke out to me. I was like, "Oh, I need to talk about this."
What's up?
So I'd love to know a little bit more. Like, how long have you played, and like, have you merged like poetry and guitar together? Like, talk a little bit more about that, like the fun side of Tucker.
For sure. Yeah, guitar is a had like a fraught but ultimately loving relationship. First picked up a guitar when I think I was like 10 and just played feverishly, like bring the guitar to the bathroom kind of vibes for like 2 years.
Wow.
And then I think in like 8th grade, I went through this breakup and I was super angsty 13-year-old and stopped playing for many years, but then brought it back maybe 4 years ago and have kind of been on like a slow and steady relationship with it since then. Guitar influences the poetry indirectly, I'd say, and directly in some ways, actually. I think it sounds like you might identify with this based on what you just described about David Guetta and the way that you relate to music, but I think poetry, while it does tap into emotion all the time in various ways when I engage with it, music does so in a really visceral way that's immediate. And your techno is my metal. I'm a huge prog metal, death metal fan.
Okay.
And so that sort of visceral aggression and excitement and adrenaline is something that I really appreciate getting to tap into through music. And a lot of the poetry that I write either is informed musically in the way I'm trying to express stuff, or sometimes in terms of the subject matter. I write odes to my favorite guitarists semi-regularly because I do feel really grateful for the feeling that they're able to impart. So I'm glad that music is also a big part of your life, because definitely it informs a lot of what inspires me.
Yeah. I don't know where I would be without music, honestly.
A lot sadder, I think, probably. I would be. I might not know it, but I'd be sad.
Yeah. Imagine a world without music.
I'm good. I'm good off that.
Speaking of, have you seen this movie called Yesterday?
No, what's yesterday about?
It's about this guy who like had an accident, and like he woke up and he had no memory of the Beatles existing.
Word. Yesterday.
And he out of nowhere just started kind of like singing all these Beatles songs, and he thought they were his own.
Oh, no kidding.
And everybody else is like, no, but that's the Beatles, and he didn't get it. It's a great movie. You have to check it out.
Oh, I'd love to. What a heartbreak for that guy to be like, I might have just changed the music world.
Right?
And then someone's like, no, you just have a subconscious memory. Sorry. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. So, another fun one. You've spoken on many big stages, nationally and internationally. You've been on the TED stage, the Google stage, Terminus, McDonald's, Walgreens, HuffPost, tons of universities, nonprofits. What is one stage that you would just love the opportunity to speak on, and why?
This is a good one. And because we're talking about music, I'm going to sort of cheat my way out of the question because, because love to perform on stages as a poet in any capacity. But honestly, if you knew how many cumulative weeks I've spent listening to my favorite guitaric music and fantasizing myself playing those solos on a stage in a dive bar in San Diego to a moshing crowd that's got the whole stank face going. If I could be in that scene on stage ripping a guitar solo for 30 minutes, totally sweaty, whatever, childhood dreams made. So yeah, any stage where there are flashing lights, and a lot of people banging their heads, and I can get my, Kiesel Vader up on stage and do some cool stuff with it. It's never gonna happen. But a boy can dream.
Never say never, though.
True. You're right. I shouldn't have said that.
And as a music fanatic, I probably would be like on the front stage, like right there
go.
in the front, cheering you on. Because I like Tucker and I like music, so.
Appreciate that. It's always good to have half homies who understand.
Yeah. What does it mean to you that you're able to share this talent of yours, this talent of leveraging words to communicate to the wider community through poetry? Like, what does that mean to you personally that you're able to do this and share it with the rest of us?
Yeah, it's a good question. In my mind, there's so much great work, personal work, professional work people can do given the right opportunity to introspect. And I guess my hope is really just that Get on Stage can leave folks with an opportunity to revisit an experience they've had or visit an experience that they have not in a new light and see where that leads them. And I think, again, not only professionally, but personally, even if those performances and interactions don't lead to like direct action, my hope at least is that, can say one or two things that people will remember and that will stick with them, because at least in my experience with poetry, with other people who have one-liners, there's some subtle but powerful work that those lines can do over a long period of time if they're with you in a way that's vivid enough that when a situation comes up or a thought that you have that's relevant to it provokes that memory, something really slight shifts in ways that we don't always notice. But my hope is that I can leave folks with a couple of seeds like that they can take and make their own in whatever way means something to them.
I would say a lot of us here at Excel today definitely will walk away with at least a couple of nuggets from your keynote this morning. So thank you for sharing your gift with us.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So how can our listeners connect with you or follow you on social media?
Yeah, best place to connect would be on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Tucker Bryant, or on my website, tuckerbryantspeaks.com. Love to have irreverent chats about whatever. So yeah, hit me up.
All right, awesome. And so on this season of In the Suite, we've introduced a new final question for all of our guests. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
All right, so can you introduce us to either a charity, a nonprofit, a GoFundMe, or any particular cause that you believe in, and why?
Yes, I would like to shout out Cardiomyopathy UK, a charity that supports people in the UK who live with cardiomyopathy. My sister has cardiomyopathy, Kenzie. She's a big inspiration to me creatively and personally. And I think it's always great to support this work that's being done to help people that are affected by this condition, of whom I think over 200K in the States at least are diagnosed a year. So Cardiomyopathy UK, a little bit of nepotism there since I know the listeners might not be in the UK, but hey, help us, help us, help. Check it out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this In the Suite is international, so
Boom.
Definitely. Thank you
Excellent.
for sharing that.
Appreciate it.
Well, Tucker, I really appreciate you taking the time. So late at night, it's 8 p.m. We're here in Las Vegas at the beautiful Chelsea Theater at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us in the suite, and hope you enjoy the rest of your stay here.
Thank you so much. And Stephanie's not sharing that she's actually on East Coast time, so it's not even 8 p.m. It's 11 p.m. and we shout her out for that.
Still up and rocking.
Lovely speaking to you. Appreciate your time.
Same here.
You're listening to In the Suite, a podcast that shares amazing stories of women and men in business and the financial services and the wealth management industry. Our producers are Tina Powell and Kevin Hirshhorn. Our editor-at-large is Kevin Hirshhorn. Our content writers are Dimple Rashandani, Daniel Wheeler, and Tina Powell. Please let us know how you enjoyed this amazing episode with the multi-talented Tucker Bryant. And again, special thanks to our co-host, Stephanie Foster, and share your thoughts on social media, #InTheSuite. You can connect with both Tucker and Stephanie on LinkedIn, and Tucker's website is tuckerbryantspeaks.com. And thank you so much for listening and subscribing and giving us 5-star reviews. We are so grateful to you. It's been an incredible year. We've got listeners in 1,245 cities and 61 countries. We owe it all to you. We're so grateful. Thank you so much. Feel free to email me at tina@inthesuitepodcast.com to pitch guests for season 4, 2023, and let us know who you want to see here at In the Suite. Again, thank you so much for subscribing and listening to In the Suite. Take care.